to the rhythm of the violent breeze.
So we got tickets to tour Independence Hall, and the tour is about to start. So we're running a little bit late, but here's Independence Hall straight ahead. And after that, we're gonna go see the Liberty Bell. Just doing some touristy stuff today. So excited.
Check them once and that's it. Yep.
Yes, go ahead. Yeah.
We're going to be going on the tour of Independence Hall here very shortly. But before we get started with the historical building, we're going to spend a few minutes in this room talking about some of the background leading up to the events of the American Revolution, and also the backstory, folks, of this building itself. So today, obviously known as Independence Hall, very famous building, well known because of its role in the American Revolution. As originally built in the 18th century, the building, folks, very different place. It had nothing to do with the American Revolution or the creation of the United States. When this building was built, guys, the United States didn't exist. So this was actually the Pennsylvania State House. Specifically, folks, the colonial Pennsylvania State House. Prior to the United States, folks, we had British colonies here in North America. Pennsylvania was one of them. The relationship between Great Britain and the colonies, strong relationship. We're not always teetering, folks, on the edge of revolution. For many decades, we had a very solid relationship with Great Britain. We had strong economic ties, wide range of political rights and liberties, even significant rights under English common law, like the right to a trial by jury, or innocence until proven guilty if you were accused of a crime. So if you have been walking the streets of Philadelphia or conducting business in the State House during much of the 18th century, and you had been talking, folks, about the collapse of the relationship with Great Britain and the coming of this great revolution and this fight for American independence. A lot of people, folks, would have, quite frankly, considered that to be crazy. Right? They did not imagine a situation developing where this relationship would fall apart, where anything would happen, folks, that would cause them to sever the ties with Great Britain and fight for establishing a new nation. That's not something, folks, that crossed most people's minds. And that sentiment did not begin to change until we get into the 1760s and the 1770s. When after a conflict called the French and Indian War, we are going to start to see a shift. And we are going to start to see problems developing. So 1760s, 1770s, the colonists are going to begin to feel that many of their rights and liberties, those rights and liberties are now being threatened or denied. When the colonists try to work these problems out by, say, protesting to the king or the parliament, they feel as though many of their protests and petitions are going unanswered or ignored. So as a number of years pass, and a multitude of issues begin to pile on top of one another, this relationship, guys, is undermined. And we're talking, folks, about truly a multitude of issues. The coming of the revolution, folks, was not caused by a single issue. So the 1760s and 1770s, we can talk about taxation without representation. We can talk about restrictions on trade. We can talk about restrictions on the colonial systems of government. Restrictions on English common law. And many more. If you ever want the full list, really easy place to find it. Just read yourself a copy of the Declaration of Independence. The bulk of that document, guys, is a list of grievances against the king. And if you count up all the grievances, you're going to find that there's almost 30. So this is not a single issue, folks. This is not just one thing, folks, that the colonists become infatuated with on that drive to revolution. There are multiple issues that drive that wedge between the colonies and the British Crown. And even as the situation gets terribly serious, even nearing the point of crisis, people, folks, don't want to let go. They don't want to give up the relationship with Great Britain. The fall of 1774, there's a meeting in Philadelphia, just down the street at Carpenter's Hall. It's called the First Continental Congress. Delegates from 12 of the 13 colonies, every colony except Georgia, meeting down there for a month, and trying to figure out how they can work together to alleviate the crisis and work things out. These delegates, guys, didn't talk about revolution or independence. They talked about things like an economic boycott on British goods to try and get the Crown to listen to them and restore the rates. They talked about ways in which the colonies could better correspond and communicate with one another to share news and information. And they sent a petition to King George III, pledging their loyalty, but reminding the king of the rights and liberties that had been unfairly denied them. So even now, 1774, there's still that hope among many that this relationship is not doomed, and somehow, folks, we can still salvage it. Now, we know today the efforts of the First Continental Congress don't work out. The king ignores the Congress. He doesn't pay attention to the meeting here in Philadelphia. He ignores the petition that the delegates sent. And that means those tensions, they remain unresolved, which 6 months later leads to disaster in Massachusetts. The battles at Lexington and Concord, what we popularly call the shot heard around the world. Now you've got the colonists, the British military forces, the fighting has begun. Blood has been spilled. And so now that this relationship is seemingly in shambles and the crisis has arrived, what happens next? What's the next logical course of action for us? Should we continue the efforts at reconciliation? Try to salvage the relationship even now? Or should we do something radical? Should we cut the ties with Great Britain, cut the connections, and fight for our independence? That's going to be the decision, folks, of the Second Continental Congress. After Lexington and Concord, delegates return to Philadelphia, the Second Continental Congress. Second Continental Congress guys come up the street. They don't meet at Carpenter's Hall. They're going to meet at the State House. And now these delegates from all 13 colonies, they've got to make that choice. But even now, it's not easy. These delegates, folks, don't all agree with one another. They don't all see eye to eye on what the best choice is. Declaring independence is an act of treason. The penalty for treason is death. So, is this the best course of action for us? How are we going to get the colonies, folks, to unite together around a common goal? How are we going to get the colonies, guys, to work together towards a common goal. That's what the Second Continental Congress has to try and figure out. And as you might imagine, that's going to be a little bit difficult. So we're going to have some pretty fierce debate, some pretty great argument, folks, taking place inside the State House. And that's the building, guys. That's the room that we're going to be seeing on the tour. Now, when you come next door, please do remember the rules, guys, and I mentioned outside. I know some of you may not have been able to hear, so the basics, folks, are have your cell phones silenced so they don't go off in the middle of the tour and disrupt the program. Please do not bring chewing gum or open food or drink inside. If you have any of that, seal it up nice and tight, put it away, or throw it in the trash can. That does help us to preserve the historic building. Cameras, those are fine. You can take as many photographs as you want. Any personal belongings you might be traveling with, guys, they have to come with you. There's no place to store those items, and you will not be coming back to this room, folks. So anything that you might be traveling with today, you need to bring that with you, and please keep it with you throughout the program. We will be heading over, guys, momentarily, but for 1 second, I need you to sit tight, and you guys can come with me. I'm going to get you the ramp on the rear of the building, okay? Hey, Julia? Guys, going inside to your right. Watch your step, guys. Well, if nothing. Remember, quietly, guys. Yeah, going quietly. Quiet. Committing an act of treason against the British Crown and fighting for independence. People aren't thinking that way during most of the 18th century. It's just not what people really contemplate. And that's why the events of the 1760s and then the 1770s, that's why those are so important. Because that's when everything begins to fall apart. It's not going to happen overnight. As I told you next door, there's not going to be one single issue, folks, that causes it to happen. But over the course of a decade, starting with the aftermath of the French-Canadian War, we see these problems that undermine the strength of the relationship, that ultimately will lead to the collapse of the relationship, and force the Second Continental Congress to choose either loyalty to the British Crown or American independence. The Second Continental Congress, folks, is going to make that choice in the State House. After Lexington and Concord, the delegates arrive. They are loaned the use of the room that you see across the hallway. The Pennsylvania Assembly has moved upstairs to the second floor. So now the Continental Congress, folks, is here. And they are making their great choice. What does the future hold in store for us? We're going to go across the hallway. We're going to see that. That's where the tour continues. Excuse me, guys. Come over. Thank you. Thank you. Pardon me, guys. Thank you. All right. So, ladies and gentlemen, you are now standing inside the assembly room. The Second Continental Congress begins to call this room home in the spring of 1775, just a few weeks after Lexington and Concord. Delegates here from all 13 colonies, but trying to get these delegates to agree with one another on what should happen now that fighting has broken out and what the best course of action is for us. It's difficult. Not every single man in this room agrees on what should be happening. So the Congress is going to struggle for many months and ultimately more than a year as they try to build consensus, as they try to find unity. And as you might imagine, they've got their hands full. Because on the one hand, fighting's already broken out. We've got to fight back. We've got to defend ourselves. The Congress, folks, has demanded the war, the conflict that has already begun. On the other hand, there are certain groups here that say, well, yeah, fighting's broken out, but maybe there's still a chance at reconciliation. Maybe we can still patch up the relationship. So they push for something called the Olive Branch Petition to be sent to King George III. Even now, they're not completely giving up hope. So the Congress, folks, is deeply divided in those early stages, and no one really knows what the future holds in store. But as the weeks and the months pass, and we move from 1775 to 1776, it starts to become apparent that working things out with Great Britain, that's probably not going to happen. The king ignores the Congress, he refuses to negotiate, he refuses to compromise, the fighting does not stop, it only gets worse. So as the weeks and then those months pass, reconciliation, that's looking less and less likely. And that's when people grow to start supporting the idea of a potential break or a separation from the rule of the crown. Now the first person to officially propose it is a delegate from Virginia, a man named Richard Henry Lee. He's going to stand up in this room June of 1776. He's going to propose that the United Colonies, they should now be free and independent states. So here's a defining moment, the first official proposal for independence. But even now, this is risky. If we're going to vote on this, we need to be prepared. We need to make sure that the colonies, folks, are at last going to unite together. So what the Congress does is they delay the vote. We're not going to rush into this. We need to be prepared. So the Congress delays. But while the Congress delays, they do something significant. They allow a committee, a group of 5 men, to write up a declaration, a written document. It's going to announce independence. Now, 5 men are on this committee. One of them happens to be another gentleman from Virginia, that's Thomas Jefferson, and he's chosen to write most of the text. So June of 1776, not only is independence proposed here at the State House, but a declaration is drafted. So everything is starting to come together. But the one key component we're missing is the vote. What is the Congress going to decide to do? And we're not going to find out the answer to that question until we get into July. It's not until July of 1776 that the Congress guys are going to make that fateful choice. Now, it does not happen on a single day. So despite the way we celebrate in this country, we celebrate every year on the 4th of July, it doesn't all happen, guys, on the 4th of July. There were 4 days of argument and debate here in July of 1776. There were arguments on both sides of the aisle. Some delegates saying that independence was still premature, that we were moving too quickly, we were rushing into this. If we're not prepared, this is going to be a disaster. So some delegates are still holding out. But the majority of the men making the argument that there is no other choice. Trying to continue the efforts of peace and reconciliation is useless because it's already been tried over and over again, and it's already failed over and over again. So they're going to make the case that it's now or never regarding independence. The colonies vote by majority. So when the majority of the delegates make a shift to independence, this in the end is enough, folks, to kind of push us over the edge, to unite the colonies together. And so after 4 days of argument and debate, the choice is made. We will declare our independence. We will no longer fight for our rights and our liberties as Englishmen. This is a fight to establish a new nation and to secure our rights and our liberties as Americans. So in the summer of 1776, everything else is going to change in this room. The Declaration of Independence, that's going to change everything. But as significant as it is, declaring independence, it doesn't end the story. Independence is declared. But after we declare independence, we have to fight for it. We have to achieve independence. That takes another 7 years. The American Revolution, the War for Independence, goes on, guys, another 7 years. Not only do we have to gain independence, we have to think about the future. We have to contemplate how we're going to govern the nation we create. The Continental Congress spends many long hours debating a document called the Articles of Confederation to help guide the nation forward. But when the war ends, the Articles of Confederation, which gives almost all the power to the states, it fails the young nation. The 13 states win independence, but then after they gain independence, they turn on each other, and the states start to clash and fight with one another over different issues. So everything starts to kind of fall apart after the Revolution, because the states are bickering and fighting for so many different issues. What happens in the end is in 1787, out of this chaos, this turmoil, another convention of the states meets in Philadelphia at the State House. Delegates attend from 12 of the 13 states. Only Rhode Island doesn't send a delegate. But these delegates from 12 states come back with instructions to fix the articles, to try and revise or strengthen them. They meet for 4 months, and at the end of their 4-month stay, instead of having fixed the articles or revised them, they have replaced them. These delegates have come to the belief that the articles is too weak, too deeply flawed, something stronger is necessary. And so these men have crafted the United States Constitution. So the same building, same room where independence was declared, now our new framework of government is created. We are now going to have a president, a Congress, a Supreme Court of the United States. There's going to be a real structure for our system of government. There's going to be a strong national government to try and provide stability. That's what these men are going to try to piece together. Now, it doesn't mean it was easy. There was fighting, there was argument. Some delegates said that it was too radical, okay, because there were very serious questions that had to be answered, like how many presidents were we going to have? And was the president going to be elected or appointed? The large and the small states, they're still fighting with one another. The large states feeling that they should have most of the power because they've got most of the people. But the small states making the case, they need a voice too. So trying to make sure that the large and the small states all have a say in the government. So imagine sitting here, debating these issues and more. These weren't the only questions that had to be answered. and you're trying to craft this into a framework of government, and you're delegating us from one of 12 different states, this is not always going to go smoothly. In fact, there's some arguments that these men confront that they do not have solutions for, and they don't have answers for. The new Constitution, folks, is written right here without a Bill of Rights. No written guarantee of rights and liberties for the people. Those things like freedom of speech, freedom of the press, those are left out. These men can't decide how they're going to include that, so they leave it out. These men debate slavery. Most of these men own slaves. There are some in this room that have never owned slaves. But there's already a divide on the slavery question. So slavery comes up in these debates. But again, an issue, folks, that is left unresolved. So this is going to go on, folks, for 4 months. Some delegates will leave the convention. They don't think what's happening here is going to succeed. This is too radical. This is far too different than anything that's being tried. This can't work. So there's delegates, guys, that left the State House and went home. But most of the men chose to stay. And the ones that stayed, they fought with one another, they argued with one another, and then they found some room to compromise and bargain. They made deals with each other. And that willingness to compromise and bargain, at least on some issues, that proved critical. It allowed these men to work together towards common goals, and in the end, complete that new framework of government. The last day was September 17th, 1787. That's the day the Constitution was signed. A handful of delegates had been here 11 years before, signing the Declaration of Independence. Most of the names, most of the faces, guys, are different. If you compare the names on the Declaration and the Constitution, most of them, guys, are different. There's only a small handful that signed both. But one of the men that signed both was Benjamin Franklin. Franklin signs the Declaration. He's now back and he's signing the Constitution. After he signs the Constitution, he points out the chair where George Washington sat. Now, George Washington served here in 1787 as the president of the Constitutional Convention. He's not yet the president of the United States, but he was the president of the convention. That is the chair that he sat in. Carved into the top of the chair is a cat sun. Benjamin Franklin's been looking at that carving during the debates and wondering, is the sun supposed to be rising or setting? He doesn't make up his mind until the last day, when the debates are finished and the Constitution is physically being signed. That's when Franklin turns to a few of his colleagues and tells them that I now have the happiness to know that is a rising and not a setting sun. It's his way of expressing his hopes and his optimism for the future. And his belief that what has been accomplished in this place so far, that's a good beginning. It's a good starting point for the nation. If we can now build upon these beginnings, Franklin sees the promise of a bright future, what he views as a rising sun. And of course now, you advance this story more than 200 years into the 21st century, and the nation, folks, is still here. The Constitution has remained our framework of government for more than 2 centuries. Language from the Declaration of Independence still inspires millions and millions of people, such as the idea that all men are created equal, and that all are entitled to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. But if you stretch that timeline from the 18th to the 21st century, you're going to see, folks, the work that has to be done to build upon those foundations, create what the Founding Fathers call a more perfect union. And that includes everything from adding a Bill of Rights, to abolishing slavery, to granting women the right to vote, to facing an array of civil rights issues, folks. It's part of our story. Okay? The story of the United States, folks, begins here. It doesn't end here, folks. It continues on. Okay? And the fact that it continues on, that's a testament, folks, to what happened in this room. The foundations are still there. They are strong enough to let us continue building upon them. And those foundations, folks, were first pieced together in this building and this very room. And that is why today, people don't walk around calling this building the Pennsylvania State House. That's what the Founding Fathers called it. That's what this building was. We call it, folks, by a nickname, okay? Independence Hall. That name was created, folks, decades after the American Revolution. Founding Fathers but the name was created, folks, for a specific purpose, to remind people of what happened here. So it reminds you folks that Independence Hall is the birthplace of the United States. Thank you all for visiting. Have a great afternoon. Thank you again.
Thank you. Super cool. This is where the United States started. America. So that was pretty cool tour. Now we're gonna actually go see the Liberty Bell here, and then we're gonna go see the Documents building. So.
Thereof. It's from the Torah.
So we were just over there at Independence Hall, did the tour, and then the Documents building is the wing right next to that we just went through. It had the Declaration and the Constitution in it, which is really cool. We saw the original ones, and now this is Washington Square, this park right here. So we're just gonna walk through here and then make our way back to the car, but we're on 6th Street and we gotta go back down to 15th, so it'll be a bit. We'll see some stuff on the way. So hope you guys are enjoying it. I am. So this is George Washington Square Park. I was just reading this plaque. You probably can't see it, but it says America's First War Heroes. Revolutionary soldiers who fought and died for this nation's independence are buried beneath this ground. And then it goes on just to talk about this plaque and stuff, but that's pretty interesting. So much history in this town, it's unbelievable. So we are still in George Washington Square Park, and I just read you that plaque, but this was on the other side of the fountain. Still has a flame, it always burns. Freedom is a light for which many men have died in darkness. It says, in unmarked graves within this square lie thousands of unknown soldiers of Washington's army who died of wounds and sickness during the Revolutionary War. So this park, there's thousands of soldiers buried under this park. Unbelievable. Such a part of history. Beneath this stone rests a soldier of Washington's army who died to give you liberty. Hits you right there in the feelings, eh? Are you excited?
Yes.
What are you gonna do?
Eat
What?
a lot of Philly cheesesteaks.
We are at Cartman's Cheesesteak, about to eat the best cheesesteak in the city, Philadelphia. I'll let you know how it is. Oh, man, that cheesecake was bananas. I think I just said cheese, I meant cheesesteak. And we are heading back towards the car. Man, that place was awesome. So it's called Cartman's famous, just Cartman's famous cheesesteaks, right? Oh, it's so good. And we just picked up some donuts, right? The same area. I don't remember what kind it was. It's Elvis Delight. It's like bacon, banana. I don't know. It sounds awesome. But we're gonna do some metal detecting. We're leaving the city tomorrow. We're gonna be in the city yet tomorrow, and then we're gonna head out to a farm where we're going to my wife's friends for her wedding this weekend. So I'm gonna do some metal detecting in their yard. They got a farmhouse, so it should be some fun. See you guys there.